Hello, and welcome to episode 13 of the Confident Carnivore podcast. Today's guest is our good friend Lark. Hi, Lark.
Hey Janice, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you today?
I'm great. Sun's shining.
So, Lark is actually all the way in Australia. So, it's actually tomorrow for her because we're here in the United States. And so, she's ahead of time for us. And we know Lark, she's one of our dear and beloved friends from the MeetRx community. We're like one big family over there. So, Lark is actually one of the first people I met when I joined on my very first meeting on the MeterX platform. And I remember Lark was out, you were out on your property, right? Working
Yeah,
out there.
I was shifting dirt and it was your first day. Remember, I had a trailer and my tractor out and I'm shoveling dirt, and you're probably thinking, who is this crazy Australian?
I was wondering because there were just a handful of us on that meeting, and I thought, oh my goodness, is this normal for our carnivores? Do they all, move earth and have tractors?
Some
But Lark was so friendly and she welcomed me right in. And, she's just a ray of sunshine on the MeterX community platform. So, with that, we're going to actually show you Lark has a very interesting history that led her to becoming carnivore. So, we're going to find out a little bit more about her story through photos, and then we're going to dive in deeper with her through conversation. So, with that, Lark, do you want to go ahead and
ugh,
give us a few details about these photos?
it's always frightening, isn't it? The only reason I have this photo is it was my mum's uh, 70th, 80th, can't remember what birthday, but it was an event, obviously. So I was 46, and that was the result of eating a sad diet. Um, Really, I gained my weight in my 40s, and that was just this. Really, that was the start of a bad kind of 8-year period. So that's not a great place to start, is it, for a bad period? But so I just ate the standard Australian diet. I was eating a lot of sugar, a lot of chocolate, and I had a lot of sadness in my life at that time. So yeah, it's awful looking back. It's amazing looking back because you almost don't recognize yourself. And that was kind of the next year. I was 47, and that just sort of shows, my body weight. I kind of carried it off because I was tall. I thought I carried it off because I was tall. I am tall, but clearly not. Ugh.
Wow.
So at that time, I was working in my own business. I'd established a chocolate making business. I was a teacher and academic all my career, but when I lost my partner and then I lost my dad and my stepdad, all within a fairly close period of time, I really suffered with deep grief for many years. And I just couldn't kind of keep going with my regular day job. And so I'd already established my business. Actually, it was a hobby, just making chocolates, giving to friends and colleagues. And so when, after I came back from overseas and my partner had passed away, I threw myself into my business to really establish this business. And I ran it from home. I built a commercial kitchen, and I made beautiful gourmet chocolates. And I trained here in Australia and in short courses, nothing professional, but short courses like cooking courses. But then I was lucky enough to have 2 sabbaticals with my university job over the years. And so I had the opportunity to study chocolate making in France and Belgium and Switzerland. Yeah, so I really got into it. So I'm a foodie, and I just
Oh,
loved it. That's how I got into chocolates. But
wow.
unfortunately, I ate most of the profits, as you could see.
And I'm going to give a little trigger alert because we're about to show some of the beautiful, incredibly exquisite chocolates that Lark made as a chocolatier. So if you have a chocolate fancy, close your eyes for a few moments.
Absolutely.
And wow, they are just exquisite. So these are chocolates that you sold then, right?
Yeah, so these are chocolates that I made and sold, and it's a Belgian style, probably French style of really highly decorating the chocolate, making all the ganache fillings, everything like that. But I won't say too much because I don't want people to be triggered, but just to show you where I've come from. That, you know, that was my full-time job for 10 years to giving up chocolate. But obviously that's another picture of before I gave up chocolate. Again, that's when I was 50, so that's 11 years ago. I'm 61 now. And so I was still in the midst of certainly of my chocolate business at that stage.
Wow.
And that was a few months after giving up sugar. So again, I still had my business, but when I was 52, I first gave up sugar for 30 days. I was starting to feel really crook, really, really sick. Sorry, that's an Australian. But you know what that means. So I was feeling really, really just fatigued. And, you know, I had a lot of customers who would ask to make sure that my product was gluten-free because they were celiac or whatever. And I started to think maybe I was gluten intolerant or had pre-diabetes prior to this. So I gave up sugar for 30 days after hearing an interview on the radio about the dangers of sugar, and then downloading a little ebook and reading that. And David Gillespie's book, Sweet Poison, he's an Australian writer, that really influenced me. I read that and just thought, that's me. You know, that's me with being dog tired and just not feeling well and all these things that were happening. So I thought, okay, you know, I'll do this for 30 days. I'm not going to do it forever because A, I love chocolate. B, I'm a chocolatier. This is my life and job. You know, I was making chocolate, sending them around Australia, selling them to businesses who sold them on. I had opened up a bed and breakfast, so part of it was giving the guests chocolate experience, bringing them in for chocolate making classes, like it was my life. So I thought, okay, I'll just do this for 30 days. Within 3 days of giving up all sugar, I just felt fantastic. And I'm like, oh, what do I do? Great, you know, this is my job. So anyway, I kept that up. I kept off sugar for 3 months, and that next photo that you showed where I'm in shorts, that was actually a beautiful health retreat at Byron Bay, and same with, yeah, so that one there, and then the one with the emu, I was about 56 at that stage. That's in keto. So after giving up sugar initially, I tried to explore all the alternate sweeteners because I didn't want to give my business away, and I thought, I'll just find a healthier sugar. And at that time, David Gillespie's book talked about the evils of fructose being really dangerous, but that glucose was okay, right? That was his argument. And so, of course, I got onto glucose. And over that next 18 months, I played around with glucose and lots of alternate sweeteners to try and still make my chocolates, but to make them fructose free. So I did that, and I established this nice little niche market, and I was eating the fructose-free chocolate as well, thinking that that was fine because I was keeping away from the worst of the sugar. But about 18 months later, by that stage, I'd started to gain weight. I'd started to get more depression back again and was just feeling really bad. I can remember the day I came back from my birthday lunch with family, and I was just so depressed and so lacking confidence that whole lunch. You know, I was looking at my family and thinking, you know, thinking poorly of myself and where I was at in life. And so I Googled that night, and I came across Professor Tim Noakes's one of his lectures on low carb. And I just went low carb the next day, signed up for the Meal Revolution course, the Real Meal Revolution course, which was an online course in low carb. Joined that, which was the first course they ran, which started a week later, and I went low carb from then. So I was 55, and that's when I went low carb. And I've been low carb ever since, and I stayed keto for about 3.5 years before I found Carnivore.
Wow. So you just were gradually making the steps because you just weren't feeling, you were feeling like mentally and physically off. So then you would keep looking for the next. Is that kind of your thought process then, or?
I was in really severe grief for 8 years.
Right.
You know? Not only gained weight, and not only was the diet probably absolutely adding to my depression and the way I felt, I just was in such a bad place by the end of that 8 years that I finally got sick of myself. It took 8 years to get, and it wasn't even, maybe it was my lowest point, but it just was a point where I just got completely fed up with myself. I got bored with myself. And that, I can remember the time it changed. I just was sitting on the couch and I just went, you know what? I think I'm done. I'm
Mm.
done. Let's set this aside. I've grieved. I've done well, well done you, that's enough. And I just got absolutely bored with myself. So that was the start of me climbing out. And that's when I gave up sugar and then started to just, low carb. I thought that was keto. That's absolutely the answer. I was absolutely happy with that. I'd lost the weight. When I gave up sugar, I lost 33 pounds, 15 kilos in about 9 weeks. It just absolutely fell off me. And then with keto, I just got healthier and healthier. And that's at that age, I think I was about 59, 60
Mm.
at that stage. I had started carnivore by then. So basically, I got to the end of keto and I still had things to do. And that was a year or so ago.
Wow.
And that's just this year, a month or a few weeks ago.
So now along the way, what happened with your chocolate business then? Because you were on the giving up sugar, right? So that was a
So,
pretty significant.
yeah, basically, I'd been keto for about 18 months, still running the business, not eating any of it, like not licking, not tasting, not nothing. I just relied on sense of smell to cook, friends and family to taste. I just, yeah, I just said to myself, if I can't go in the kitchen and cook, make this product without eating it, I'll close my doors tomorrow. And of course, with business, it's a lot better financially if you can wind things down and kind of prepare the way. So I managed to do it. I managed to do it for 18 months and I closed my business because I didn't believe in it anymore. I felt disingenuous about kind of selling a product that I personally wouldn't eat because it was just high in sugar and it was addictive. So I didn't feel good about it anymore. Even the fructose free stuff, it's like, well, that's low carb. But now I know that even those sugars aren't good, like all sugars aren't good. So I just couldn't do it integrity wise. It just didn't feel right. So I just closed my doors.
Oh, and were your dedicated customers heartbroken?
Happy, dedicated customers, friends, family, tradesmen who used to come and work on the house. Everyone was really annoyed. They were really
I mean, how did you tell them why?
no, no, I don't think so. No, it was just. I mean, obviously, my closest friends and family knew that I'd gone low carb by that stage, but no, I just did it. Move on, do
Oh.
something.
And for those 18 months while you were, tapering it down and cooking without or baking without, I don't know if you call it cooking or baking with chocolate, but preparing without tasting, how was that for you? Was it draining your energy to be using willpower, or did it kind of just go away as a
Well, here's the thing about keto is I was having the alternate keto sweeteners. So
oh,
I was baking with keto. I was making things with almond flour and alternate breads and puddings and all those sorts of things. And I kind of fooled myself at the time that I was still sugar free, that this wasn't kind of sugar because it was the sugar alcohol alternatives that keto accepts, like stevia and xylitol and erythritol. I mean, I've tried them all.
mm,
So I was I was feeling fine with that. I just make sure I went before I'd go in the chocolate kitchen. I was well fed. I didn't go in hungry and I would eat something nice before or after. And it was okay. I didn't struggle with keto at all. But, since discovering carnivore, I realized why, because I was still kind of getting that little bit of sugar, the sweet hit from keto.
mm. And what was your health, your mental state like while you were doing keto?
So keto was great. I love keto. I didn't realize it could get better by going no carb. But keto for me was fantastic. I didn't have a problem with it. It was easy. Socially, it was easy. foodie wise. I could make all these creations. I could recreate almost anything that I used to eat on a SAD diet in keto. So I was actually really happy. My health was pretty good. I say pretty good because before I started Carnivore, I wrote down all the little symptoms that I had even on keto, and they were about half as many as I had on the SAD diet before I went low carb, but there was still like 14, 15 little things that were niggling me that weren't ideal. So mental health was better, depression was better, weight was better, body composition better, but not as good as it's felt on Carnivore. And interestingly, I can remember one of your interviews, you kind of went head to toe of your symptoms. And I kind of need to do the same to remember everything. I think depression, grief, anxiety, mood fluctuation, they were probably, and the weight, they were probably my biggest symptoms. But all through my life, I just assumed that it was kind of normal to get the stuff that people get. And so, you know, back in the day when I was younger, I had split ends in my hair. I had a bit of dandruff. I had a little bit of acne. I had occasional styes that you get in your eye. I had chapped lips. I had developed very bad gum disease, gingivitis. I used to get allergies, seasonal allergies, sinus problems. Occasional coughs and flus just seemed normal to get that 2 or 3 times a year. I was a teacher, so I was always in touch with kids. So I thought that's normal. Later on, I developed bursitis in my shoulder, chronic bronchitis for 3 or 4 years in my late 40s. I was living in a very damp, foresty area in the mountains. And I lived there for nearly 30 years and I was fine until the last 3 or 4 years where I was running my chocolate business. I just developed a, flu or something one year and it went into my chest and I just could not shift it for 3 or 4 years. I couldn't sort of breathe deeply, or if I did, I could kind of feel it irritating. And that was part of one of the reasons that I moved onto the farm, was to get out of that damp area, because it was just, we used to joke that it would rain 6 months of the year and the trees would drip the other 6 months. It was a really damp area. So bronchitis for 3 or 4 years, working down the body. Bursitis in my elbow, aching joints, swollen finger joints I started to develop. This is all on keto still. Bursitis in my hip, a knee that was really sore, Achilles tendonitis in my foot, and of course the depression, which I took medication for about 3 or 4 years. Wow. In a way, that's kind of, I was suffering grief. I just lost my partner and my dad's. It makes sense that I would be depressed, but I was prescribed antidepressants, which I took for 3 or 4 years. I gave them up before my 50th birthday. So all of those, and then by the end of keto, because it's quite dirty keto by the end, I was eating a lot of nuts and seeds and cocoa powder sweetened and cream, dairy sweetened with alternate sweeteners. I developed this itchy back for probably about 3 years on keto that drove me insane. And wow. I never worked out what it was. I got it looked at and it's like, yeah, it's some sort of dermatitis reaction, but who knows what. I didn't think that it was a food. So I just used to have back scratches all around the house and in the car. And yeah.
Well, it sounds like with all of those things, you were far from thriving on keto. You were doing significantly better than on the standard Australian diet, right? Which, can you go into a bit just on the standard Australian diet? Is it pretty similar to the standard American diet? Do you know your pyramid?
Maybe the standard American diet in the countryside, like in the like more of a farm type. That's my image of American food, but that could be wrong. So, lamb chops, mashed potato, peas and beans. That would be an average meal when I was a kid.
Okay.
It was all home cooked because mum worked from home, and she'd make a dessert maybe once a week, chocolate pudding or, something sweet for sure. We'd have sandwiches for lunches with cheese and peanut butter or whatever. We'd have fruit, pasta, rice. I think it's probably fairly similar to
Yeah.
most people. And it was considered a balanced diet, as long as you ate enough of your healthy grains, not too much meat, just a little bit of sugar, not going crazy, then it was considered healthy. But of course, now we all know, we know different. And the trouble for me was because I was so hooked on sugar, and I'd always use sugar as a way to kind of elevate my moods if I was feeling anything, if I was feeling nervous, if I was feeling anxious, if I was feeling depressed, if I was feeling upset, it was always going to sugar and chocolate. So I had a really deep pathway in my brain that kind of said, I feel this, I know what will fix that. And it did fix it in the short term. I'd feel better immediately. And then of course I'd get the effects a little bit further down the track. But even with that, I didn't actually feel the effects of it until I cleaned up my diet. I used to think I was fine. I could eat anything when I was in my 20s, 30s. Nothing seemed to upset me. I didn't get upset tummies. I didn't think that the mood swings were to do with what I was eating. Seems
Mm.
now. And when I look back on my relationships through my 20s and 30s, oh man, if only you could relive that as a sugar-free person, maybe, well, life would have been a lot less dramatic and a lot easier, and I would have been a lot easier partner to live with. And, I look back on that. But at the time, it seems normal. It seemed normal.
Right. You think that's just who you are, and you're dealing with circumstances and relationships, and you just get used to them being stormy, right? I mean, I remember that dating in my 20s and 30s and just accepting that, I'd be so reactive and so emotional and jealous and just all of this storminess. But you're right, it's the up and down caused. And I also was hooked on sugar. And it's funny, but we never noticed. We just think that's the way we are. That's the way life is, right? You never notice that, oh, this is like, I eat this and then there's a delay and then bam, you're down again. Then you look for another up and then bam, you're down.
Yeah,
So,
I think for me, it was more like, it was always up here. The sugar consumption was always high, and it would just go higher. And then it'd go normal, and it'd go higher. Like, it was actually never really low. So that's why I don't think I didn't even notice after I ate something sweet that it would change my mood or anything, because I was constantly in this elevated sugar state, I'd say, most of the
oh,
time.
wow. So, and then it sounds like when you went to keto, you started making all of the substitute things. So you're keeping the sweet taste very much alive then in your mind, right?
And I fooled myself. I really fooled myself. I thought I was sugar free. I really did. I didn't think that those would have an effect because I was focused on the carbs. And I have 0 carbs. So I'm like, cool, that's great. And I was happy in the keto days. I thought it was as good as it could get, and I didn't expect to. I wasn't looking for anything else. Yeah, I was quite comfortable with it. I was a keto evangelist. Like, I really hammered my friends and my family. I met low carbs the answer. I found the answer. So I did. I actually did some training to be a keto coach. I didn't work as a coach. I just did it because I was interested to learn more about the science. I really read up strongly and watched heaps of things, like I have with the Carnivore too. I really wanted to understand the science of it. I was still working as an academic at that time, and I started some collaborative research projects to actually quantify and study people on low carb diets to show the improvements that they were making in reversing diabetes and whatever. And so I really got involved on that started to get involved on that academic level. But in the end, I didn't, I couldn't sort of pursue that myself because of the other things that happened in life for me with the grief, that just became impossible.
Wow. And so now you're pretty heavily committed to keto and you've got all of these lingering ailments. So how do you get from that to even finding carnivore?
Yeah. So there were 2 motivating factors to make me look for something more than keto. I started to hear carnivores interviewed on keto podcasts that I listened to all the time. So I'd come across Sean Baker. I'd come across there were other carnivores whose names I don't recall, but I obviously remember Sean. And I knew it existed. And I think it took a couple of months of listening to those podcasts before I came across somebody who mentioned improvement in bone health, improvement in mental health, improvement in allergies. So there's actually three things that motivated me. But it was really the bone health, because I discovered 10, 20 years ago that I have weak bones. It may be a genetic component. My mum certainly has that problem as well. I was very athletic all my life. I was very, very athletic in my 20s, and I had dysmenorrhea, loss of, or amenorrhea, isn't it called? Loss of period for about 12 months when I was rock climbing and bushwalking and hiking and just, you know, a super, super active at that time. And so I thought, oh, that's probably the reason that it leached minerals from my bones. But now I think I understand it to be more the diet, the sugar, the oxalates, maybe removing the minerals. So I was having tests in bone density, you know, over the years, and my bone density was getting worse. And I kind of assumed it was the sugar. So once I gave up real sugar, that with keto it would improve. I'd see some improvement over 3 or 4 years. And so the last bone density test I got just showed a continual decline, even though I was keto. And I thought, okay, well, keto's not enough. It's not enough to build my bones, and that was one of my priorities. So I really went to carnivore for that. And also a few months before I went carnivore, I moved onto this farm property, which I adore. And I had the grass. The grass was pretty long, and it got cut. It got slashed. I got somebody in to slash it. And I was just hanging over the fence watching him work. And I was breathing in all the grass dust. I didn't even notice, because he didn't even have anything. He wasn't wearing a mask or anything on the tractor himself. So it didn't strike me as being silly to watch from a distance. And I just came down with a severe reaction to the grass pollen or something, and had this anaphylactic reaction. And over the next few hours, my breathing just kind of, my throat closed over, and it's getting worse, and I'm here by myself. And so I figured I had about an hour before I couldn't breathe. So I just took myself off to the emergency room in the hospital. And I was okay. They didn't have to do anything. They just monitored me, and I came out of it okay. But I thought, terrific. You know, I've just bought this huge property and am allergic to it. Not good. So,
and then you're thinking, now I have a farm and I'm allergic to it, you poor thing.
Right. Maybe would have liked to have known that before I bought it. So that was a major motivator too, because I'd heard that carnivore lowers inflammation, and that people with allergies had found that it resolved their seasonal allergies. So, and which it did for me, like almost immediately. I haven't had a problem since.
Amazing. And then what about your bone density? Have you had it rechecked?
I have, and it's a bit weird. So my spine has improved and my hip has decreased, or the other way around. So they checked one femur and spine, and one had shown improvement and the other had shown decline, even after enough. Well, I probably had the test after about 2 years carnivore. So it's like, that's a bit disappointing. But what am I going to do? Like, I've had so many other gains on carnivore that, you know, of course I'm going to keep going with carnivore. And just that's probably part of the reason that I really focused on gaining muscle. And I thought, okay, that was another reason for my bone health. If I can improve my bone, my muscularity, then I'm going to be a lot safer. And part of the risk of people with weakened bones, with aging, is not just weaker bones, but tendency to fall over is that you're going to be much more at risk. And so if you can just be strong and have good body strength, then I'm going to be a lot safer. So hence the reason for getting into resistance training and weight bearing exercises.
Let's go ahead and take a look at, can you see the video, Lark? Let's just take a pause and share some of your strength training.
So this was after 2.5, maybe 2 years of regular, twice a week with a trainer. I was 60, and we both thought, oh, this would be fun, just take some videos at age 60, because Joe, my old trainer, and we both said, yeah, we want to look like this into our 80s. Like, why not? If you do a Google search, there are these crazy people who are in their 80s and look amazing. So we said, right, let's take a video at 60. So there was that one.
I just love these videos.
There's Joe off to the side.
And you go to the gym every day, right, Lark?
Pretty much every day, about maybe 5. I give myself maybe a day or two off a week now. I'm training myself rather than Joe because I moved, 40 minutes, a bit too far from that gym.
Mm.
But and of course missed last year because of COVID. Everything's been closed, but back to it now.
Your back looks amazing. So that you said is age 60, right, for these videos?
Yeah, yeah.
So this was initially you decided you're going to build strength for the bone density question then.
Absolutely, and still do. I mean, that's still a major motivator. Obviously, it's nice to be, it's brilliant being strong now that I'm on a farm and I'm lifting up, 25-kilogram bags of horse feed and bales of hay, and I'm working really hard physically because I love it. I could pay somebody to get some of the jobs done if I didn't want to, but I really enjoy it. And it's so good to be strong. And, people at my gym used to annoy me because they'd say, oh, you don't need to come and work out. You're on a farm, like you're moving hay and you're doing all of these things. I'm like, that's the reason I'm at the gym, to make sure that I am super strong so I don't hurt myself on the farm and I can still keep living this lifestyle into my, who knows what, 70s, 80s. The previous owner left here when she was in her 80s. So why not?
Well, and we love watching you when we're on our Meter X. We've seen you installing fences, doing all kinds of, literally running a farm. And I mean, to me, your degree of strength is insane, right? I mean, I couldn't do even one of the things that we just saw you doing. So for your strength then, I mean, what was your process? I mean, do you think because you were eating carnivore that you had more strength, more energy for working out, or did you really have to start from nothing like we all think of when we start working out?
Yeah. Look, I think when I first started and I was eating keto, I was just a little soft. Like I looked okay. I'd lost the weight, but I was just a little bit soft. I didn't have much muscle definition. And I expected it all to happen like that, like I did in my past. You change your diet or you start exercising or do yoga or try to meditate. And if I did it for 3 months, that was a huge achievement. It was more likely I'd do it for weeks, less than that. And I expected to see results, and it just takes longer. It takes a lot longer. So I don't think I saw a real change to my body shape under 12 months, 18 months at the gym. Obviously, there were changes, but I didn't notice them that much until 12, 18 months down the track. It was like, okay, I can see a few changes here. And, it's taken 2.5 years. And now I can look at people and I can kind of guess how many years they've been working out. It's time. It's
Yeah.
time. My trainer, who was a fabulous role model for me, she's my age. She's been working out in bodybuilding for a decade. And you can see that's on her body. She's so much more muscular than I am. And it's just time. So I'm fine with that now. I've learnt patience, finally, and humility, finally. Um, and just know that it actually, you just have to keep chipping away, doing the same thing, little things every day, and they kind of add up. And that was part of my, shall I show you my jar? So this was part of, I should talk about that carnivore sugar thing for me too, but this is something that works for me, which was, I started 5 months ago, and every time I would have a completely sugar-free day, like nothing off carnivore at all, I'd put one paperclip in this empty jar, and it's almost full. It's not quite full. So that's 5 months of really not missing a day of eating exactly how I want to eat, which is not going into sugar and chocolate. And that, when I first put in a paperclip or 2 or 3 or 14 paperclips, like 2 weeks, wow, I should feel absolutely cured of chocolate or sugar. It's like, no, it would just look like nothing in the bottom of the jar. It's like it takes time to fill up, but now it's still not even full. I don't know if I'll get a year in there before I have to have a bigger jar. But that really worked. And that was an idea from James Clear's book, Atomic Habits. And it was just keep doing the little things, the 1% improvement every day, and it'll compound like interest does in the bank. And that's really been the answer for me, is just to keep that focus on doing it every day. But even on Carnivore, it took me a couple of years to get to that point with sugar and chocolate, to not ever delve into it again.
So at the initial period of Carnivore, what percentage would you say you were doing Carnivore with? I know you were having the little bit of chocolate, little cheats around the edges.
So I was 90% carnivore and 10% chocolate.
Okay. So your pretty significant part of your plate was chocolate.
Well, not really, if I average that out. So I was carnivore all the time, except when I lapsed into sugar and chocolate.
Okay.
So I never went just keto. I never went back to SAD diet. I was always carnivore. I'd never given up on it. It's just that every few weeks I would fall back to have to buy, chocolate sugar. I'd eat it maybe the once, maybe the following day or two, and then I'd be back on board to 100% carnivore until I kind of lapsed again, and I'd have a little bit of sugar and chocolate, or a lot of sugar and chocolate, or a keto treat, chocolate bar with alternate sweeteners, and I'd do that, and I'd get back on carnivore. So it was that constant struggle. The progress for me was that I didn't tend to fall as deeply, and I didn't stay in the sugar chocolate binge for as long as I did in the past. So it got shorter and quicker to get back on, but it still annoyed the heck out of me that I was still not able to just, you hear some people, they go carnivore and within weeks they're like, oh, I'm fine, no craving, it's all good, I'm never going to touch that. But for me, I think it was much more embedded in my brain as a way of dealing with that. Even if it was just a slight drop in energy, like a slight drop in emotion, I could feel a little bit anxious around too many humans, too many people. I joke that I don't like people, I love animals. Honestly, I do love some people. You've been one of them, and other people on the planet I do love. But too many people can just, I'm an introvert, like I can be outgoing. I mean, I was a teacher, I was a lecturer. I can be very outgoing and perform, but I get my energy from being by myself, my alone time, or in nature or with animals. So if I have too much contact with people, I just get a little anxious and a little drained, and that would be a time that I'd be looking for something to pep me up.
Oh, I totally know that. I mean, I'm also an introvert and I would feel very similarly. I love animals, I love nature, highly sensitive person, and it's interesting this conversation because I noticed that I still have all those same sensibilities, but it's not as exaggerated. So like you said, allergies, environmental sensitivities, overstimulation from social settings, the whole carnivore thing has really dampened that, where I used to be so reactive to it. And I too depended on sugar and food to give me that security or that boost, when I felt like, oh, everybody values extroverts and you need to give yourself a little bit more boost to be at the energy level of everybody else. So I would do the same thing. I mean, I would always lean on sugar for that. And so I totally get what it means to have it be so deeply embedded in your just it's also behavioral. It's not just the mind being, it's emotional, it's behavioral, it's very like deep ties to that go-to. And I too, for the first year and a half of Carnivore, I was, 95%, but I would buy those little boxes of the Ferrero Rocher, I don't know the little hazelnut balls at Costco. And I'd be like, I'm eating all carnivore. And then I would just keep it, in the fridge or up on the shelf. And then when I was having one of those moments where I was feeling overwhelmed or stressed at work or all of the things we talked about, I would have those triggers and I would go to it for that little bit of comfort. And I would go, oh, I'm doing fine. I'm only eating one. But guess what? Some nights I would eat a row, right? And I would justify it saying that I'm doing carnivore, I'm doing well, and I just need this. I just need this little boost, this comfort, because I'm dealing with so much, and even a lot of it was well into the pandemic and just all that stress. And I'm like, I need it. I need a little bit. And I even started adding the alcohol because it's like I just needed those little hits, the little dopamine boost or whatever it gives you. So I'm wondering when you started, and you said, no, this is it. I'm going to do my paper clips. I'm going to cut that out. What was it that gave you the leverage to do that?
Wish I knew. I wish I knew because, gosh, that's the answer, isn't it? That's the answer that everyone wants. And I'm curious to know. I was talking to this with a close friend the other day, and I was saying, was MeatRx, having a community of carnivores, was that what made the difference? And maybe it was because I had a year on Meter. I joined MeatRx over a year ago, just at the start of 2020. And that gave me a community to talk through what was happening. I was happy to be upfront and honest. There's no point being anything else in a support group like that, to say when I messed up and how I was feeling. And it was actually before you came onto RX. And so it's only the older members who look at me now and just know how far I've shifted in the last year, because it was a really tough year last year. I was also rebuilding my house. We had the pandemic and lockdown for about 9 months here, and it was a tough year. So that didn't help. But it was, yeah, I certainly really struggled at times. So I think that maybe that community difference, but that was still like probably 8 months of community input. If that was the extra, maybe that was the extra factor. But I just got to the point 5 months ago that, like I said back in the day, when I just suddenly one day after 8 years of grief, suddenly just went, oh, that's it. I'm actually done with that. I had that same sensation about 5 months ago. And I had another episode where I'd gone out and bought 3 or 4 or 5 bits of chocolate or bars or lollies or something. And 2 or 3 days later, I just went, I'm done. I am so done. And I just knew that that was it. I don't know how I know. I don't know if it's a spiritual thing. I don't know if it's just time, that's just eventually things just kind of peter down, or whether it was the support. I really don't know, Janice. I wish I knew that. I just know the feeling in my heart when it's only happened to me twice in my life, and once was with grief, and once was just more recently last year with sugar. And I just knew in my heart of hearts that finally I didn't have that. It was always otherwise a conscious, like my conscious mind was going, okay, I'm going to give up sugar. I'm going to not eat chocolate. I'm going to eat carnivore. This is my plan. I had it all planned out. But somewhere that subconscious, that deeper level had never let go of it and always used that. And it was just something I just knew my whole being was like, that's it. It's just gone.
Yeah, I kind of know what you mean because I had the same thing. It's like I also didn't know for sure what to attribute it to. I thought, well, it could be the support of the community, the accountability, having to report out to say I did this, I did that, and being in integrity, like you had talked about with the chocolate. It's like, well, I say I'm a carnivore, but if I'm only 95%, there's a piece of that. But I do know what you mean, that it's like, it's kind of like this deeper spiritual or subconscious, like unlocking of something, but it's like your soul is just like, that's it, and I think what I love about Karna's whole journey, and a lot of people have, we've come through similar pathways, right? Where you cross through keto and then you still, it's like, what will you accept for the quality of your life and for what your worthiness, what you deserve. And I think there's something about the healing journey where you start to really go, I deserve, I'm worthy of the fullness of what's the potential of what's possible. And you start to, it's just this gradual thing that you're just kind of moving toward it. And all of a sudden these little like chambers are unlocking or something as you go. I That's the only thing I can think of, because it's like I hit that point too where I said, no, I'm not going to cheat myself in this way. It's not about my brain telling me,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. That's
you know,
interesting. It's interesting because you have reminded me that when I started keto, and I went through also a sugar kind of program, Sugar Free Revolution with Karen Thompson, who's been interviewed on Sean's podcast, that they got us to write down 10, 20, 10 gratitudes. 5 had to be about general stuff and 5 about yourself. And
mm,
I can still remember that it took me 3 months to be able to write 5 things that I was grateful for about me. Like, how terrible is that? Like, I'm an accomplished person. I've done stuff, I've succeeded at stuff. And yet I just couldn't. I could say 5 things about the outside world. I'm so appreciative of my cats, and I'm so appreciative of, my mum, and all those sorts of things. The cats were a constant, gratitude every single day. I wrote these gratitudes for 3 years every day. And it took so the first 3 months, the advice was just fake it till you make it. So write down something, even if you don't believe it right now, just write it down. So, I love myself. Yeah, right. It would always have a fake it till you make it in brackets afterwards so that they knew where I was at. And that went on for 3 months. I would tear up. It would just be awful to think, oh my God, I don't feel anything that I'm grateful to me for, because I
mm,
guess all you feel is the hurt of things that you haven't done as well as you wanted. I was a real perfectionist at that time. And then I was able to kind of say, okay, yeah, I'm grateful for me. I'm grateful for being me. And I kept those written gratitudes up for 3 years, and it rewired my brain. I went from a
wow,
mostly negative thinker to a positive thinker. And it was almost like, I can remember in the past when I was really depressed and I'd be somewhere and people would greet you with the usual, oh, hi, how are you? They don't really want to know, but I couldn't even fake it to go, oh, hi, good, thanks. I'd just say hi, or I'd just say, and what about you? And in my brain, I'm like, yeah, right. Like, how am I? Like, it's a good day, or good morning. Isn't it a beautiful day? It's like, yeah, right.
mm,
And after writing these gratitudes for years, it was almost like I was primed, like I had the answers there. So if people say, how are you? I'd sort of, all of these thoughts, these positive thoughts that I'd written down of, yeah, I'm so grateful that today I get to do this, and that my cats did this, and, I'm getting fitter or whatever. That was at the forefront of my brain. And it really did shift me. But not that that meant that I gave up sugar at that same time. It still took another 6 years, 5 years after that before the sugar went away. So
wow.
it was just you're saying an unlocking. For me, it was something similar to that. It was just this real, it was a shift, like a real mental, spiritual shift.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I think I appreciate what you say about that experience, because I remember going to all these, self-help, personal growth workshops and feeling the same way, totally unworthy, really confronted if they had you write qualities that you like about yourself. And it just felt so like uncomfortable, right? Just like I would cringe and think, this is just like, I'm never going to feel okay with this. And then I like the word prime, because it's like you start to rewire, you're priming your mind. And I always imagine what they say about the way bamboo grows. I think it grows all of its roots down first, and then it suddenly starts growing up, right? And that's kind of what I think about with all of this. It's like it takes a long time to get the rooting down before you're ready to really surrender and release these things that are holding us.
And I mean, there were lots of, if I look back over those years when I was, suffering grief and sort of going back, that's 14 years ago now when I lost my partner. Um, I had to also learn heaps about building boundaries, like maintaining boundaries. And it was so interesting that part of that was relationship boundaries, but it ended up being a physical boundary issue that I had an awful altercation and problem with a neighbour. and it was all about boundaries. And it was like, oh, isn't this interesting? This is a bit of a metaphor for my life, really, that it's about kind of deciding on the boundaries. So I kind of, you know, people who weren't good for me, good for my life, it was choosing to not relate to those people, to actually make better choices in everything that was around me. And so for a while that meant kind of being by myself for a long time. I mean, 14 years, I had no intention of getting into a relationship, no intention of falling in love. Like, that was just off the table. And I think I was just healing for that whole time and rebuilding and just getting into this new space for sure.
Well, and I love the idea. I mean, I think the carnivore diet is like there's something about how much more solid you become in yourself. I know my partner Aaron, he always says that I show up so differently, right? I'm more assertive. I walk differently. I stand more solid. I carry myself differently. You know, Raymond and I have talked about this about, you know, you're in a meeting and people listen to you when you talk. I had this thing where nobody would remember my name ever. They could never remember my name. And suddenly now people do. And those things just sort of fall away. And like you're talking about building boundaries, you know, it's like my therapist actually 2 weeks ago, she says to me, a boundary isn't, it's not keeping somebody out or something out, it's keeping you in, it's containing yourself and you know, filling yourself up to, you know, being your full best highest self. And I think it sounds like you had all, it's interesting, you're just the journey, the arc, you know, giving up your business and your passion, you lost your partner, you had to reconstitute everything, and then right at the moment where you were ready to totally solidify, then you find carnivore, right? I mean, I think it's fascinating that it tracked with your healing and your eating journey. Kind of interesting.
But there's also something about courage, and I used to hate my friends calling me brave. I just railed against it. It's like, is that like a word meaning stupid? You know, I thought it was a brave decision. You're just saying I'm stupid. Like, it was really, really risky to do that. So I moved onto the farm 7 months before I went carnivore. You know, I left my old life, my chocolate business, memories of past relationship, etc., before I, you know, while I was still keto, moved onto the farm. And I think that was also part of just shedding the past, stepping out, following a dream that I didn't even know was a dream. I'd forgotten how much I'd wanted to live on on a rural property. And I'd been looking for about 3 years. And then this property came up and everything just went right. Like, it was mine within a week. I still, you know, friends with I've got a lovely friendship with the previous owner. She's 83 now. I'm still looking after her old horse. I've got her old dog. I mean, it's just beautiful. Everything was so easy. I didn't know anything about farming. Probably still don't. My friends who are farmers think I'm an academic, and my academic friends think I'm a farmer. You know, so it's all new to me. But it's learning new stuff, and it's just, you know, having the confidence, I suppose, to just. I do have confidence in myself as a learner. I love learning new things, and I just watch and listen and get on with it. But I think it's interesting when I look at my life that actually it took me to step out of my comfort zone, take that kind of risk, move on to, you know, move the property, move away from the little group of friends that I had on the mountain, out on my own here. And then I got the reward. And it's been a bit like that with carnivore. So I had to do carnivore for almost 2 years before then I got the reward of, the sugar addiction completely vanishing. And then I meet a carnivore mate, you know, like I'd done all of the, I don't know, you know, I feel like I'm being rewarded. So I'm so grateful and so thankful. And I do not take anything for granted. I don't even take for granted the fact that I say that I'm completely, you know, I've set aside sugar and chocolate. That just means I need to just never, ever go there again, because it would still
Right.
be for me. So I don't take that for granted at all. But it's just, I think the rewards, like James Clear says in his book, there's a delay. You know, you make a change, a positive change in your life, you don't see the effects straight away. it can take weeks, months, years, and then suddenly you get the reward.
Then it manifests, right? I don't know if you've heard of the concept of vibrational escrow, right? You're improving your vibration, and then suddenly it's in your vibrational escrow, and then it manifests, right? It manifests after all of that kind of preparation. And kind of, I see carnivore as like an upward spiral. It's very gradual, but it's just this gradual upward spiral, and things are unfolding and manifesting. And then that's why everyone always says, write it down, because you're going to forget all of these gains that you've had. And going back to that list, the lingering list of keto, the head to toe, how much of that has resolved since going to carnivore?
30 symptoms pre-keto to 15 symptoms on keto to now I'd say maybe 2. So the bone health is obviously still going to take time to improve. I can't remember what the second one is that I would say still need. Oh, it would have been sugar, so I can remove that one because that was always still there. So really, it's just the bone health is the one that obviously will take longer, thin bones, for me to really know where that's at. But in the meantime, I'm just working on muscle strength. And so, yeah, I feel fantastic. I feel the healthiest, the most well mentally, and the most content that I have in my whole life.
That's amazing. And your back scratchers, what have you done now? Have you repurposed them?
I have. I've got a really big horse that's adjusted on my property, and she's so tall, she's like 17 hands, that I use my old back scratcher to scratch her head and neck. But bits I can't quite reach, and she loves it. She sort of leans in and she kind of curls over to make you move it in different places.
Well, I would love, I want to touch on the topic of your carnivore love affair, but I wanted to say before I forget that if you wouldn't mind doing like a video of your property and of your animals and things, so that we could post it as well, because your home, your farm, I mean, they're stunning, and we've all gotten to kind of see it around through the MeetRx meetings and the animals. And it's just like the fact that you're actually doing that, I mean, to me, it is courageous, and just seeing your beautiful kitchen, and you're making so you are still a foodie basically, right? I mean, I've seen your beautiful creations, and you're pretty experimental. I know you were eating urchin. So can you say a little bit about your actual carnivore cuisine, like your staples and how you eat?
Sure. So I eat when I'm hungry, which tends to be once or twice a day. I may not eat till 2 o'clock in the afternoon. This morning I ate a little bit earlier because I knew I had a busy day, and I was a little bit hungry. I ate a steak with butter this morning. Yesterday I had some scrambled eggs with lots of butter and some leftover egg salad that I'd cooked, which was hard-boiled egg with some crab meat and some speck, which is really bacon, and some bacon mayonnaise, like baconaise, mayonnaise made with bacon drippings. And that was really filling. I eat fish maybe once a week or a fortnight, every 2 weeks. I'll eat sashimi. I'll eat a little bit of raw steak, which I love if I can get that. I've tried eating liver. I do okay at times, and then it kind of drops off a bit. I try and make myself pates and things like that. So I kind of go from, I really do enjoy the foodie stuff and creating something, to then if I don't have time, don't have the energy, don't feel like it, I just cook a steak. Like, it's so easy. I'm not a big ground beef person, what we call mincemeat person. That doesn't appeal to me that much. So I don't tend to rely on that very much. I eat just the egg yolks because the whites don't sit as well with me. I don't notice it, but I got some crazy food, excuse me, food allergy kind of thing done, and it showed that dairy was a bit inflammatory for me and egg white was very inflammatory. So I might put in the occasional whole egg, but I'll add lots of yolks to it, so it's very fatty. I try and keep my fat quite high, mainly from animal protein. I've given up dairy, except for I don't regard butter as dairy. I have butter, not that much to be honest, because I've got a lot of fat from the animal food. So I just add to it if the meat looks a little too lean. I've gone off cream. I've just sort of pulled back cream because I can overeat it because it's very sweet to me. And it was one of my foods that on keto, I would have just added heaps of alternate sweetener to it and made some sort of delicious dessert. So it, unlike you, I was impressed. You were talking about your Ferrero Rocher and just having maybe one, even a line. Like, no, if whatever size those foods come in would be what I would eat. You know, that's my serving size. I find it very hard to control that. So um, that's the reason I've sort of held back on cream this month.
So Lark, can you tell us about the most interesting topic that we're going to cover today, which is that you have found carnivore love unexpectedly?
Well, yeah, unexpectedly, very unexpectedly. So, yeah, I suppose the preface is that after I lost my partner, I just ruled that out. You know, it was like, I'm good, I'm happy, I've experienced love, you know, it's all good. Nothing can compare to your last love. If you lose them, you know, you just think that was it. You're not going to meet anybody else better or whatever. And so it really just, I just closed my heart, closed my mind to the whole idea of it. Um, I didn't suffer with that. It was just like moved on to other things, just closed that part of my life, really. And so it was with great surprise that about 4 months ago, or 4 or 5 months ago, days after I put the chocolate aside, days after that revelation, that I know that is really weird to me, right? So like 3 days, because he remembers, we both remember it very clearly, our first conversation on Meet RX. And I'd come on, I was digging in the dirt again. I was in these old, in my overalls and talking really candidly, as I do on RX, you know. And he was talking very candidly about relationships and things in his life. And so that made me feel comfortable as well. But normally I'd say whatever. And so I just said that, oh God, you know, I ate chocolate and sugar, you know, Friday night, which was like 2 or 3 days earlier. And I said to him that conversation, I said, you know what, I'm done. That's it. I am absolutely done. And that was our first meeting. And so we met on Meet RX, and neither of us looking for partnership, neither looking for a partner or love or anything like that, both there just to heal, just to eat the meat and talk to other carnivores. And we just connected so strongly from that very first conversation that both of us kind of went away and said to people in our lives, oh, I've just met this really interesting person, like this really significant person that I really want to know more about. And there's a lot there. And so then we had a couple more conversations on RX. We didn't see each other for several weeks, just didn't bump into each other in public meetings. And when we did, we would just talk, you know, an hour.
Oh.
And then as people were starting to come into the group, because for a while, our second and third meeting, we were the only ones on, and then we could see people popping into the meeting, and we're like, so I very quickly kind of said, let's swap WhatsApp details so that we can talk offline. And we just haven't stopped talking. Like we've been, I think we wrapped up 300 hours on video in the first 3 weeks or 4 weeks or something crazy. And it's just an amazing thing to me that I didn't even realize that that it could happen, that it might happen, that there's somebody who I feel so strongly about and feel so right about. And we really both sort of feel like we've found our mate for sure.
Wow.
So, you know, do I put that down to health and healing? Absolutely. You know, I'm in a place now that I'm taking on something that I didn't think I would ever face or do, because it's tough if you've loved and lost, and everybody's been hurt, everybody's suffered in relationships in some way or another. And I didn't want to go back there. I didn't think that I ever wanted to kind of talk about the sort of feelings and face the sort of things that you do when you have an intimate relationship. And yet I absolutely feel 100% right about getting to know this person very, very deeply. And it's just been fantastic. And it's been it's been super easy, like absolutely easy and comfortable.
Wow.
And I think that gives us both, because he's obviously a carnivore, it's given us both confidence that this is not like relationships were in the past. It doesn't feel anything like the relationships that I've had in the past. And it makes me feel confident that I'm a carnivore, so my emotions are steady. I'm actually with carnivore mate, so eating and food, and he's a foodie, and cooking and everything like that is going to be easy. And I know where he's at emotionally with food is just going to be supporting him like it does me. So it's an amazing journey that we're both on, and I'm just so excited about it to do it as carnivores. Like I say, with the sort of stability and
Mhm.
just I feel so different. You know, I look back. We talk a lot about what we've learned, and you know, we're just getting to know each other at such a deep level that we're reflecting on where we've been and the things we've learned. And it's like thinking of a different person when I think of myself in relationships in the past.
Wow. And then just the beauty of that you were just saying earlier that this is the best you've ever felt in your whole life.
I know.
Your
I said, I
this
told him,
physical health and
he dodged an absolute bullet. Like he's getting the best version of me. Like, you know, you sort of think, oh, if only we'd met years ago. But no, 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 no. I would like to have met when I was the way I was. And so we're both at a point in our lives where, yeah, we're just getting, well, we'll continue to get healthier, I know, because the longer you are in carnivore, I think the more you just keep healing deeper and deeper, and you don't even realize there's things to heal. So that's absolutely exciting. Yeah, it's amazing.
oh, I'm tingling just from the excitement of it and just the possibility and I mean, I've mentioned to you that we're thinking of doing these kind of carnivore couple roundtable discussions. The carnivore couples are popping up here and there, and it's just like once this mystery man's identity is revealed, then you two can participate in the carnivore couples dialogue.
And
Um,
we would love to. We would love to because we are also interested in the fact that it is definitely a difference for both of us as carnivores. And the relationship is just so easy in the moment and so amazing. So yeah, for sure. Yeah.
and I mean, it's just remarkable that when you bring two confident, clear-headed, emotionally, mood stability, all of that, when you bring that together in two kind of whole people who have clear and, you know, healthy boundaries, healthy eating, and that when you're on that, the merger is just so much more profound and you have access to intimacy and trust and openness rather than being, I remember being so insecure and just defending and guarding and like it's all about self-protection in the relationship and trying not to be vulnerable and power and it's like
I
kind
know.
of, push and pull and it's like that's just not there.
I know, absolutely. All that manipulation and fear and whatever. And we've both already experienced times where we've handled situations completely differently to the past. I know I have for sure. And I think, oh my God, listen to that. Like I actually listened. I actually empathized and thought, okay, I can see that from your point of view. And sure, yeah, I'll change that, or I can do that, or whatever it was. And it's like, oh man, that was easy and so different because I would have been very defensive and very, oversensitive and fearful and not that I don't won't have my moments, but now it's like you feel it, you talk about it, you discuss it.
Exactly.
It's not blame, it's not this, it's not that. It's just it's life without the drama. It's life with the love and intimacy and depth of feeling, but it's just life has just lost its drama. And it's not that stuff doesn't happen and won't happen to both of us. Of course it will. But it just gives me so much confidence to be able to think that we'll be able to handle that so differently to certainly the way I used to handle things in life. So yeah, like it's early days, of course, but I absolutely look forward to just seeing how it all unfolds. It's
Yeah,
amazing.
it's beautiful and it's not just in the love relationship, it's also just access to people and friendship and openness, being able to be with people and actually hear them and like you say, see their perspective versus just reacting from your own inflamed position, you know?
Absolutely. But also I'm a Libran, right? And I think I'm a typical Libran in that supposedly we're about, like, our star sign is balance, right? And I would say I was anything but in balance. I think it was my life challenge. And I've always been able to see a different perspective. I've been able to see both perspectives to the point where I really didn't know what my view was. I didn't know what I wanted, or I didn't have the confidence to actually make a decision, take a stance and go, no, I actually like that, or I prefer eating that, or I want to go here, or I just didn't even know myself. And that's what's different now, is that I have a much stronger sense of who I am, what I'm about, what I want. And look, that could just be life experience and going through going through sadness and coming through the other side. But I do feel that the way I eat absolutely supports that. I don't have those sugar highs. I don't have those drops. I don't have any more depression. I don't have anxiety. I don't have so many of those things that I just lived with for so long. And,
I 100% agree with you. And, you know, I'm in my early 40s here, and I too suddenly I have this clarity about what I want and who I am and what I want to do, and I take action. And I never had that. It was always, you know, seeing everybody's perspective and just getting caught up in everybody else's agenda and not being able to make decisions, not being able to stand on my own 2 feet. And it's like, yeah, part of it is life experience, but a significant part of it, I mean, because you could be there, you know, eating the standard Australian diet and be just as indecisive and self-doubtful and all of those, you know, horrible things that come with an inflamed brain, right? So I feel the same. I've actually heard a lot of people saying in these conversations about how present, like Simon was saying that earlier today, just that ability to be present and be in touch with reality and just savor the moment, appreciate the day, feel grateful. Those things aren't these cognitive things that you have to force. Like, oh, I have to force myself to think something good about myself and something good about the day. It's like it actually just, you know, naturally arises now, you know?
I feel for me that the animals and living, on a rural property have done that for me in terms of keeping me in the present. You go and feed an old horse, and he's excited every time you bring him the same dish twice a day. He's just as excited, and the animals do keep me in the present. I think what's shifted for me, you were saying that people can sort of be present. So I think maybe I had some of that before, but what I've got more of now is that I can be present with myself. I can actually sit with what I'm feeling, and rather than trying to push it down and not look at it and bury it. And like, I've got some sadness that'll come up soon because I've got an old pussycat who's not well and I need to make a tough decision over. And I know that's going to be really upsetting and hard, but you know what, I'll feel what I feel. I won't be burying it by wanting to have some sugar so that I don't feel the sadness of it. I'll feel the sadness of it and I'll do what I have to do, and then that's okay. I'll get through it. So it's
Oh,
been
that's so true. That capacity to handle your own shit, basically. It's like as it comes up rather than avoiding it or numbing out or stuffing it. It's like it comes up and you can just handle it and you trust yourself. I think the self-trust is one of the biggest things that I've had on Carnivore. I could never trust myself to handle life, handle relationships, handle my own emotions, living in what am I going to defend against and manage next. It's just said, bad things are going to happen, but you have the capacity to deal it and to deal with your own, arises. Oh, we're getting an unstable connection again. Should probably wrap it up. I do want to know, what will be your first meal with your man? What have you planned out the menu?
Oh my gosh, that's a great question. No, I'm going to have to give that some really serious thought. I've got a feeling we're not going to be that interested in eating, to be honest, when we finally meet. But I might just have to pre-prep food for a week or something. I don't know. No, we haven't really talked about that, but that's a really good question.
Well, you'll be able to fast. You guys can do OMAD if you need to. So we're having a slightly unstable internet connection. So I just want to say thank you so much, Lark. I just love you dearly, and you're just such a bright light in this community, and I'm so grateful to have met you. So, and I'm so incredibly happy for you. You deserve every joy and beauty in your life that you're finding, and I just look forward to all of our future conversations together because I consider you a dear friend. So
And
thank you so much for coming on.
likewise, Janice, I love what you're doing. I love who you are. I love the fact that I met you your first day on MeetRx, and to see everything that you're doing now is fabulous. So I really appreciate you inviting me on. And yes, we will come on as a couple at some point when we're ready. So thanks so much for inviting me. And yeah, it's just great to have you in my life as well. I really appreciate the friendship. So thank you.
Thank you, Lark, and he's a lucky man. So we'll
I'm a
see
lucky
you.
woman too. Thanks. Bye.
We'll see you next time.
See ya.